Steilacoom police have arrested 2 suspects, one of whom has given a statement. They've recovered what they think is the murder weapon, a .32 caliber pistol, but they continue to search for additional evidence that will sew up the case. Police say they believe the murder victim, Paul Wang, was killed during a robbery yesterday, sometime before 2. As police reconstruct the crime, Wang was shot once because he hesitated before opening his cash register, then shot again when the cash register bell went off as the drawer opened. He was also stabbed several times, apparently to finish him off. The killer? Allegedly a 16-year-old boy. His accomplice? A 13-year-old boy, both of whom live within a mile of Wang's marina. Police say the 2 took a small amount of cash from the register, then fled.
The individuals had committed the homicide, had fled the scene some 3/4 of a mile down the railroad tracks, stopped, lost some of their, or deposited some of their material there, and had come back about 2 or 3 times during the evening.
Their booty consisted of fishing poles, candy, gum, and a large number of Bic lighters, which they allegedly grabbed as Wang lay dying. The return trips were apparently their undoing. Police set up roadblocks and called in tracking dogs. One of the youngsters was stopped by chance at a roadblock, delaying him just long enough.
The dog finally made up to that point and traced right up to the juvenile and ID'd the juvenile as the one that he was tracking.
The 2 suspects are being held in Raymond Hall, the juvenile detention center. Charges are expected to be filed early next week. In Steilacoom, Roger Gadley, Cairo Eyewitness News.
The Steilacoom Marina is closed up tight and lonely today. The owner's family is making funeral arrangements. The murder of Paul Wang in a robbery has shocked the quiet little town. He was well liked.
Very easy to get along with type fellow. He never pushed, he had any fault. It was being too soft-hearted.
He was always giving kids a candy bar or a can of pop or something.
The murder happened Saturday during a lull in business. Police say Wang was confronted by a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old who were later arrested. There was no struggle, but police say they think that because he was too slow getting the money out of his cash register, one of the youths shot him once, then shot him a second time. He was stabbed several times as he lay on the floor. Police say the youths grabbed the small amount of money in the till, then before fleeing along the nearby railroad tracks, they also grabbed fishing poles, gum, candy, and plastic cigarette lighters. They made several trips.
And to be able to go back after it was committed and not feel anything, I think that's what, grates on me more than anything, that somebody, a child of that age is capable of something like that.
Students at Mann Junior High in Lakewood, where the 2 attended school, are shocked too. Counselors have been helping some of the students cope with the fact that 2 classmates were arrested for murder. Neighbors where the boys lived say they can't believe it either.
I really don't know what to say about it because I'm shocked, okay? I'd never expected anything like this, but then again, you never do.
The prosecutor is expected to ask that both boys be charged as adults.
The actual decision of whether to take the youths out of juvenile court and to try them as adults will be made in a hearing, and that hearing won't be for another week or 2. Roger Gadley, Cairo Eyewitness News.
The Steilacoom Marina case is only the most recent story of violent crime allegedly committed by juveniles. In the killing of Paul Wang, the court documents show confessions by the 2 boys who are accused, 15-year-old Michael Harris and 13-year-old Barry Massey. But there are other cases currently in the courts. From southern Washington, a 15-year-old girl charged with killing her grandfather by stabbing him 46 times. And in Skamania County, 16-year-old Sean Stevenson is accused of raping and killing his sister and then killing his mother and stepfather. Those are the extraordinary cases that grab the headlines. But the violence is no surprise to King County Juvenile Probation Supervisor Dennis Dines.
We're seeing a more of an increase in the types of offenses that are more violent in nature, as well as sexual offenses.
Dines says his staff people are seeing more violent offenses by the juveniles coming into the detention center for 2 reasons. First is drugs. But there is also a process of victimized youngsters getting even with society.
A generic case in point would be an individual who is comes from a family where he's experienced emotional deprivation, physical and or sexual abuse. As he develops, what he begins to express is the anger at being victimized, and he does, in essence, lash out at others. We see an increase in his offense behavior. It may initially be a shoplifting. It may increase to more violent offenses. That's the only behavior they know to deal with their own anger.
But if Dines and the other professionals are right about the causes of the new trend of violence by juveniles, that message is a little scary. There may be much more violence ahead for all of us as other young victims strike out against a marina owner, a gas station attendant, maybe even their own families. The juveniles currently behind bars and fences may be only the beginning. Jim Scout in Cairo, Eyewitness News.
Barry Massey was just 13 when he was charged with aggravated first-degree murder, making him possibly the youngest person ever to be charged with the state's most serious crime. If convicted, he faces life in prison. Prosecutors contend that he and 16-year-old Michael Harris planned the robbery and brutal murder of Paul Wang, the owner of the Steilacoom marina. Last month, attorneys for Michael Harris tried to prove that it was Barry Massey who killed Paul Wang. Now, Massey's attorneys are trying to prove that Harris was the killer, who forced Massey to go along for the ride. In court, the prosecution presented much of the same evidence used in the first trial. 2 ski masks with holes cut for eyes, found near the marina the day of the murder. Fishing tackle and candy possibly taken from the marina store. Massey's family looked on, as well as the victim's widow, as the prosecutor showed one of the murder weapons.
This is the knife that I recovered with Dr. Lucina from the victim.
The prosecution plans to present a taped confession from Massey, but the defense will contend that Massey confessed to the crime only because he was afraid of his older accomplice. The trial is expected to last 3 to 4 weeks. In Tacoma, Nick Walker, Cairo News. The same afternoon that the owner of the Steilacoom marina was found shot and stabbed to death, police officer David Hall interviewed Barry Massey about his involvement.
He did not appear to be upset. In other words, he was not crying. He was not trembling. Just appeared to be very calm.
Prosecutors played a tape of the interview in which Massey told of how he and 15-year-old Michael Harris planned to rob the marina's store. In the sometimes unintelligible tape, jurors heard Massey take great care in pointing out that he did the killing.
When we went back in there, I shot him twice, and he still wasn't dead, so I stabbed him twice. Then Mike opened the cash register and took out the money. He was scared because he didn't want to do it.
Mike didn't want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
As the tape continued, Massey's family listened without visible emotion. The victim's widow hung her head. The defense is trying to prove that it was not Barry Massey who committed the murder, but rather his older companion, Michael Harris. The defense claims that Massey confessed to the killing only because Harris threatened him. Harris was tried for the same murder last month. The verdict in his trial is being withheld until the outcome of this one. In Tacoma, Nick Walker, Cairo News. Michael Harris was 15 when he and then 13-year-old Barry Massey robbed and killed Steilacoom marina owner Paul Wang. Although evidence indicated Massey actually committed the murder, both were tried as adults and both were found guilty. The crime of aggravated first-degree murder carries a mandatory penalty of life in prison with no parole. But at Harris's sentencing hearing, his attorney said such a penalty for a teenager is unconstitutional.
We didn't think the statute should be applied to a fellow like Michael, who was 15 at the age of the crime, and the fact that it would amount to a cruel and unusual punishment to be thrown into a group of adult offenders.
The crime doesn't change because of the age of the person who commits that crime. The crime is still aggravated murder in the first degree, and Paul Wang's children have to grow up without their father because of Michael Harris's actions.
The victim's widow gave the court a written statement asking the judge to make the punishment fit the crime. And while asking for mercy, Harris expressed his sympathy for the Wang family.
I would like to say that I feel sorry for what has happened to Mr. Wang. I feel sorry for his family and what they have to go through. I don't think I should have to spend the rest of my life in prison for not being the main participant in the crime.
Judge Donald Thompson told Harris the law gave him no choice but to sentence Harris to life. The judge recommended protective custody when the 16-year-old goes to an adult prison. Harris's attorney will appeal the sentence. In Tacoma, Nick Walker, Cairo News.
You have been, and I do find you guilty of